Good morning. This is Senator Dick Black, retired senator with Focus on the News. And it's Monday, February the 12th, 2024. We're going to talk about a very serious topic, which is how the Democrats are ruining children. And today we've got with us a friend who's been here before, Suzanne Satterfield, who is really a tremendous hero to all of the children in Loudoun County and throughout Virginia. She represents the real parents of Loudoun County. This is sort of ground zero in the battle to restore sanity to our schools, and there's a lot going on, and so we're going to give Suzanne an opportunity to fill us in and sort of get us up to date in where this struggle is taking us. Suzanne, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you.
So now, I understand our new superintendent of schools, who has already been in some hot water because of potentially some cover-ups of all of the fentanyl overdoses at Parkview High School. Actually, I had years ago who went to Parkview. It was a pretty decent school back then, and now they're just flurries of people. And am I correct that while the superintendent was visiting the school, there was an overdose that took place?
There may have been, and it's not only in Parkview. There was one in Academies of Loudoun in the past 2 weeks. He tried to cover it up. He had a listening session. It was the community parents listening session that night at Academies of Loudoun and never brought it up. And it's taken Governor Youngkin to get involved, to say that schools have to be notified within 24 hours if there's an overdose at their schools. Now it's down in Richmond as they're trying to make it an actual bill, so it will extend after Youngkin finishes his term. And the funny thing is that Spence really just thinks we're just really dumb. And he uses HIPAA as the excuse of why he can't say what school it is. And we all know that has nothing to do with it. Fairfax County, who's very, liberal, progressive, they say what school it is because parents need to know. Really, any overdoses at their school, but as we know, fentanyl is so dangerous and we don't know how it was used, if it was in liquid form and so forth. I've heard that and I believe it's even been in the news, that the Parkview principal has been willing to have, drug sniffing dogs at the school, and he shut that down. Don't believe the superintendent and this board when they tell you they care about children's mental health and health. And the last school board meeting where they were voting for the budget, I was pointing out again that we have, under the bad DEI policies, we have more Title IX cases. We have more overdoses. We have more fights, which that's what he tried to cover up as well in the schools. We have academic failures. 20,000 students, which is a fourth of LCPS's student body, is not at grade level up through 8th grade in reading or in math. And
yeah, I think we've got an increasing line of thought among Democrats that it's not necessary for children to learn to read or write, to add or subtract. That with lots of welfare and so forth, they can just kind of hang out, sell drugs or whatever. I don't know. There is no future when you look at liberal thought. Now they call it progressive, but liberal thought tells you that you live for today, for the moment, for the instant in time, And so if you want to kill somebody, you kill them. If you want to beat up a cop, if you want to shoot up fentanyl in your bloodstream, you do it because you live for the instant. There is no future. You don't worry about whether you can read or write because, for one thing, from the Democratic standpoint, they condemn the idea people once upon a time had to pass a literacy test to vote. Well, there is nothing more rational in the world than the idea that we should not be governed by people who can't read or write, people who are mentally incompetent and this kind of thing. But in any event, we really are seeing a war on children, a Democrat war on children, where they're promoting fentanyl, making sure that the southern border is open so that the cartels can extend their tentacles to every neighborhood, every block in the country. And now you mentioned Title IX. I don't think all of our listeners are necessarily familiar with Title IX.
Well, these are, cases where, female students in school have maybe been sexually assaulted, or, they have felt some type of, been in some type of situation that has made them feel unsafe as a female based on their sex. And remember just last year that the school board wanted to cover up the independent report. And that was done on LCPS. And they found, I think it was like over 120 Title IX complaints in just a matter of months. And there's no apologies by the school board. There's no tightening the screws. They're now moving to what's called whole child community schools. And if you look that up, that's part of the CDC's plan, which is more governor outreach. In fact, the school board just voted as well to add more pre-K in. They want, full-time, I believe it's full-time pre-K in the schools. That's part of the Biden plan. Get them in as young as possible.
Right.
The whole child.
If I can interrupt you just 1 second. If you look at the Democrat program, much of this flows from the earliest time, the Bolshevik Revolution, which occurred in 1917 in Moscow, where there was this takeover of the most hideous ideological force ever known to man, which was this Marxism, Bolshevik notion. And one of the keys of that, which ties into our school system, was the idea that the child belongs to the state. And the child, under the Bolsheviks, the children were placed in communes. And in those communes, infants were taken and the state, they made them wards of the state, and the children were indoctrinated by the state. There was free sex practiced in the communes. So little girls, almost infants, were molested constantly. There was just this commingling of bodies and so forth. And but the idea was you get them early, and then you've captured them, and then you indoctrinate them to be good communists for life. And this idea out of Moscow permeated the entire world through the Communist Internationale. And in 1921, I believe, the Communist Party of the United States started up, and it began to promulgate these things. Now, you can go back, the Bolshevik Revolution legalized abortion for the first time of any significant country in the world. It started there, and then it was promoted everywhere. Eventually, the movement started here, and then it took over, and has had a disastrous effect on the demographics in the United States. The the need to swarm the country with immigrants because our native population doesn't reproduce enough. But in any event, you go back, and this whole idea of destroying the morality and the decency of children by capturing them as early as possible is something that flowed from the Bolsheviks and was incorporated into the Democratic Party mindset, and it lives on today. It's a nightmare, but it continues to afflict this country. It's a global virus that has never burned out.
Well, and what they keep doing is they like you said, they've been doing it for years, and they just changed the terminology. So they keep crafting the terminology to see what would be more of a receptive term, right, for people to fall in line for without questioning, like whole child. That sounds so innocent, that we care about the whole child at our schools. Well, what that means is that because it's fact, at some schools there's Planned Parenthood. They can get puberty blockers. They can get abortions. In Virginia, where at 14, and it's back from 1990, at 14 here, children can refuse mental health, so mental health care, and they can refuse rehab. And you are now going to keep amping up these mental health counselors and social workers in our schools, in particularly LCPS. That was another part of the budget just now. And that's really, again, it's to keep the parents out. I also have another theory with this whole child, these community schools, because if you looked at the recent budget, LCPS was not looking at an increase in students, but they said we were going to get 6.4% more of English learners, which was about 1,000, which was about the number they said at the most we would increase. Where are they coming from? Who are they? And the way that I look at this, because down in Virginia, in Richmond right now as well, the Democrats want to give health care to all illegal children. So what I believe is that the purpose of the whole child in the schools, by offering health care, mental health care, counseling, etc., is the way to backdoor fund illegals in the guise of education. So the taxpayers, like when you get, them saying, well, we want education. You need money for kids to do better. And again, people don't do their research, and it's there. You have Mike Turner, who's the Ashburn Board of Supervisors, with the budget last year. What does he say? Well, of course we have to fund education. Well, wait a minute. We're looking at over $156 million in LCPS with no growth. And this school board, what they just did, which a lot of people aren't paying enough attention to, is that Spence moved DEI from HR to a direct report under him. And nobody's asking why. He also, what they approved is $20 million for him to play with under the superintendent's budget. Why? He's growing this communications department beyond means. He's even trying to add in another over, I think, $1 million to this communication budget and positions. Why? Natalie Allen, who he brought from Virginia Beach, is a self-proclaimed social justice warrior queen or whatever. I feel that they're going to take between those two departments, and they're going to push this narrative, and they're going to craft LCPS into this whole child. They want to guilt you when you say, well, I don't want recovery schools linked to public schools. I'm trying to tell people schools, K-12 public, were meant to be brick and mortar. They were supposed to come to school, and they were supposed to learn academics, and then they were supposed to go home. And now you want to have mental health care, drug recovery, everything away from educating the kids. And I'm darn mad. In fact, I was the only person who, well, Jessica Smith was kind enough to come speak with me last week. But I had the sign. I made it in the front page of the Loud and Now, sitting in the audience, because all these people were screaming about don't defund DEI, and it's given their child this voice and so forth. But they've ignored again the sign I had, which is a quarter of the kids, 20,000 aren't proficient up to eighth grade. Up to eighth grade. It's disgusting.
It's terrible. You know, I spent on and off 20 years on the education committee in the House and education committee in the Senate. And we struggled mightily to try to lift up every student and to improve the academic standards and it's sort of the moral climate of the schools. And the Democrats and some liberal Republicans just fought us tooth and nail, the smallest changes that we would try to make. And it's very difficult to imagine that we can effectively reform any institution that is so lavishly funded and so devoid of any answerability to the public. They live in a closed society where they control the flow of information. And increasingly, you see a significant market share moving from public education to homeschooling. You have a good share moving into private education, but homeschooling, with the development of cooperative groups, has really seen very dramatic growth. And now I have all of my children. I was in public school for 12 years. All of my children went to public school for 12 years. I have 18 grandchildren. Not any of them are in public schools or private schools. They're all homeschooled, and we have one who's getting close to attending college, but he's already going to the community college. He's specializing in computers and cybersecurity, and will soon be taking a very, very advanced program to get a certification. And then I've got two who are attending Duke University. I've got one at Stanford, and these kids never spent one day in a public school. They never spent one day in a private school. They were homeschooled, every one of them. And so, and I've got some who will, some may go to college, might not, but they're all bright, and they all know how to read, how to write, how to do arithmetic. They can function as literate, civilized human beings. That can't be said for all of the children who are graduating from Loudoun County. Now, Loudoun County, for people who don't know, Loudoun County is I think it's the wealthiest county in the United States in terms of average income, and for all the years that I represented it, it was typically the first, second, third fastest growing county in the United States. Very, very high literacy. You have parents who have advanced degrees and that kind of thing. But if you look at it, the math and reading scores are collapsing. And the only reason is because of this DIE concept: diversity, inclusion, equity. And the schools are dying because of DIE. It's a filthy, communist-oriented philosophy. The idea that groups will be equal to other groups, that you don't have to worry about individual behavior, individual effort, uh, uh, and uh, and this type of thing. It's just, what does the group get? If this group has so many people in prison, then every group must have so many people in prison. Um, and whatever, everybody has to be the same, which is rubbish. It is a philosophy that is unworkable. You cannot make everybody the same in everything. And what you can do in a responsible and civilized culture is you can encourage everyone to be the best they can be, and for everybody to contribute, for everybody to work to the level of their ability, and everybody to be held to a standard of behavior, because you simply cannot run effective schools when the teachers are afraid of their students. And I think in many cases that's the situation today.
Well, I mentioned that in my speech that the discipline in the classrooms is lax. I mentioned it at the superintendent's forum, where I don't even know if there were half a dozen people, parents from the community, that even showed up that night, which is just horrible. But I had mentioned about the thing is you have, when kids are home, right? If mom and dad are stressed, kids are stressed. It's the same at school. If teachers are stressed, kids are stressed. Kids will start to act out unbeknownst to them really why, and they're not getting at the root of that. And because they're not communicating with parents and trying to find out, because they're not allowed to discipline, they're not allowed to write these kids up. So parents don't know what's going on in school. And that's what I've told them. Like, we don't hate teachers. We want to work with teachers to work with our children for the goals that need to be there. But parents can't correct behavior if they don't know about it. And it's just, it's ridiculous. The NAACP people came to speak the other night. Again, they came in an outrage again about DEI and everything. But when I held up my sign, which includes a lot of minorities of 20,000 kids, where were they? Where were they when schools were closed? Where were they when 400 kids in Loudoun County were missing during COVID, school-aged kids? Where have they been? They're just there to say that they own DEI. They have their MSAC group, which, you're only, certain races or ethnicities are allowed to be members of it. It is everything that it's not. That, everything that they say it is, it's not. And it needs to still be exposed. And I wasn't really going to go speak again after last week, but I'm leaning, if I feel up to muster, I think I'll go back to remind them how, because, sadly, we had a Republican-backed school board member last week, and one that claims she's independent moderate that leaned towards not having admin bloat, who worked for LCPS, and they both voted for the budget hook, line, and sinker. So what kind of message is that? What kind of message? In fact, that's why I have issues with former teachers and current, people that have worked in the public school system even being on the school board, because that's where their onus is too. They should have been in there, and they should have been questioning in that budget and said, tell me how much of this is going in the classroom. They have a increase in there. It's like 5.6% or something for teachers' raises and bonuses. How can there's a point that also teachers can't keep saying we don't get enough support. They've been a lot of these people have been teachers for years. There's also a point that they have to have some accountability. There's ownership in several stages of this. But to sit there and throw the money at admin and ignore these kids, and don't forget, we're talking about 20,000, but there's the kids in the middle that get left behind. My son, who was an early reader, learner, loved it before we moved here. And then, I don't know, first grade or so, second grade, the one thing the reading specialist said is he needs help with comprehension. And, you know, in the area that I am in, Loudoun County, it's not as diverse, or it wasn't back then, as far as English learners go, percentage to students. And I said, okay, well, when can he get with you to work on the comprehension? She's like, oh no, there's no time for that. I don't have time for him. So,
That's a shame.
yeah.
Let me just comment. You mentioned the NAACP and its role and its advocacy for the DIE, the diversity, inclusion, equity. You know, I was played a tiny role in ending segregation in Miami. I believed in people being treated with equal dignity. And but I've got to tell you, for decades now, I've watched the NAACP, and they have become the most racist organization. They are a hardcore bunch of hate-filled racists for the most part. Now, probably here in Loudoun County, the NAACP is more viciously racist than the average, but it's typical all over the country. It is an organization that you know, it started off with this idea that somehow we were going to break down legal barriers. We were going to sort of open up things to you know, sort of equal opportunity. And it's something that I supported, but I've just watched them for so long, and they, you know, they help to inspire violence. They defend criminals. They constantly defend the criminal element against the good, decent people. There's something I want to switch just a little bit. One of our commenters has written in, and he is claiming that, you know, what are the schools doing, giving free breakfast, free lunch, free dinner at public schools. Now, I've never mentioned this before, it just doesn't fit in, but when we shut down the schools, the Democrats, we had Governor Ralph Northam, one of the worst governors this state has ever seen in history. He ordered the shutdown of public schools all across the state. And during the year that we were in a total shutdown, all of the teachers went home, all of the students went home, the budget increased. And one of the things, and you know, very few people even know that it was happening, but they turned the school bus system. You know, there's a huge fleet of school buses. They turned them into a welfare feeding process. They gave away free food to anyone. It didn't matter. You could be a multimillionaire, you could be a pauper. Everybody got free food. And what they were doing is that they were pumping up their expenses so that, you know, they could help to justify this outrageous idea that you can turn off the lights, you can turn off the heat, you can shut down the schools, send everybody home, and still require more money without bothering to educate children anymore. And there's never a year that they don't ask for more money and waste more money. I've always been reasonably supportive of good pay for teachers, but what you now have is you fund all of these bureaucrats, all of the diversity, inclusion, equity people, all of these racist hate mongers who teach children that they're either oppressed or they're oppressors, and if they're oppressed, then they should walk around through life with a big chip on their shoulder, you know, just hurling contempt and violence at everybody in their pathway. And and as they're doing things like free food for the masses in wealthy Loudoun County, they're sending a signal that there is no responsibility. You don't have a responsibility to earn income or to budget or anything. Everything is free. Everything is given to you, and the government would just print money endlessly and just give stuff away. It undermines morality in our culture.
Well, think about it again. This is steps again of them building the community school aspect. See, people just thought, what a nice gesture, right? That they offer this. It was horrible. I had gone up to my son's school because I had to, do something, paperwork or whatever. And there's the cafeteria lady standing in the front hallway with this tray of nothing. And, the food's even gone downhill since. But again, it was there when people weren't looking, and people think it's a nice gesture. It was part of slowly introducing the community schools. We have your food, we have your health care, your mental health care. We've got this. And it needs to be blown up more and more. Spence is talking about the whole child. He's, full of that. LCPS for years has been part of the ASCA, the American School Counselors Association, of turning our schools to all the problem. We are used. I have videos that Alvin Louis has shared, even in Courage is a Habit, exposing. LCPS is even mentioned as in training of ASCA's at their conventions. They go deep here, that they've been trying all these things out. And the interesting thing is, I had my friend come speak, who's a cafeteria monitor, at 2 meetings ago, because they're cutting their pay by almost $3 an hour. And they were trying to claim that it was because of the loss in the cafeterias. And I'm trying to tell people, no way is that money have to do with food sales. They have nothing to do with food sales. In fact, they're in there to not just clean tables, but to supervise kids and to be there for emergencies, because teachers aren't allowed in the classroom and administrators won't do the job. And guess what? They don't report to food services. But now you just gave raises to all these teachers and everything. Don't tell me DEI when you just spit on cafeteria monitors, janitors,
You're saying they're cutting the pay of cafeteria workers?
Cafeteria monitors. Yeah. And those are the ones that are in there with the kids. But also, I'm finding they're also have cut back the staff in the back part of the cafeteria. When you've got one elementary school, I've heard you have one manager and one food preparer. That's it for a whole elementary school. Elementary school. And then there are times where they're shutting off selling like the extra treats and stuff because they can't manage it. They don't have enough. And and I guess when I looked at the budget, they also, some of this food stuff has to do with grants. And there's just so much everything and tied to the federal government. And what they forget is you could get rid of cafeterias, right? Get rid of prepared foods. All kids need to eat at school. So you will always need those cafeteria monitors. Somebody's got to watch over those kids. They are separate of food and services, and they were shot in the foot. And what they did when we brought it up publicly, all of a sudden they started emailing the current cafeteria monitors and saying, well, we're actually not going to cut your pay, but we're going to cut it on new hires.
It's atrocious that these well-off racist administrators are getting higher and higher and higher pay. And then you take people at the base level who are doing important work, like a cafeteria monitor is very important.
I've done it.
To maintain order and to keep
Mhm.
things flowing through the cafeteria. Those are important people. And then you take their money away and you put it in the pockets of these well-heeled bureaucrats who do nothing but promote hatred in the schools. Well, it is all of that. I'm just so grateful that you're there, that you're keeping an eye on things. I never would have known. Nobody would have known, were it not for you, that they're cutting the pay of cafeteria monitors and people like that who help to maintain a sense of order and normal schools. So, Suzanne, thank you very much for being with us. I imagine we'll see you from time to time, because I don't think this issue is going away anytime soon.
Yeah, sadly, it's not. Thank you so much for everything that you do and for having me.
Well, thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for being with us today. Focus on the News. I'm Senator Dick Black, retired senator, and we will be with you next Monday. We are grateful for all of our watchers. You can always tune in and get us on Twitter, which is now X, I think, XX or something. My address is at SEN Richard Black, and at SEN Richard Black. So please share that. We have lots of things happening very quickly, and we did want to take time out to talk about our school situation. We had not had enough time to go into the transgenderism and the terrible Frankenstein procedures being carried out on innocent, helpless children, worse than anything that Nazis ever did. The stuff, if you could hear, I've been tempted to describe the surgical process done on little boys who are, whose parents decide that, well, we're going to make them into little girls, and we're going to make them to where these homosexuals can have a type of really vile intercourse with the little boys. It's just, it's so hideous that it just transcends the horrors that we've seen throughout the last century. It's just incredible. But in any event, I know Suzanne has worked against that, and we'll probably touch on that in the future. So I'll sign off. Thank you, Suzanne, for being with us, and we will see you next Monday. Focus on the News.